What's up, folks? This is Ray DeLucci with the Repertoire Report, and boy, do I have a lot to cover today. A restaurant chain quits the U.S. market and is rewarded. Are you the problem in the kitchen, or is it the kitchen itself? And much more. Before we begin, if you are interested in learning more about the tool Justin has been working on over the last few months, go to the description and fill out the form for Chef Tech Stack. This is a tool built to optimize restaurant operations and management, specifically with the technology you use on a daily or weekly basis. I know a lot of chefs in 2026 are using a lot of different softwares or tools in restaurants. And what Justin is working on, I think, would be a tremendous help, and not only help, but just a tremendous tool for organization, efficiencies, and optimizations in your restaurant. So go to the description and check that out. Justin has put a ton of work into this. He's using his experience and his knowledge of kitchens to build this tool, and I think you're going to really, really like what he's building. Before we begin, as we're recording this, we are at 1,998 subscribers on YouTube. Our goal was to get to 2,000 before June. So if you are listening and you are not subscribed, if two of you who are listening and not subscribed, go hit subscribe. We will hit our goal. The Repertoire community gets larger, a community of chefs, cooks, and line cooks everywhere, just looking to be more involved in the food world. So if you are following along, please do hit subscribe and like. If you're listening on a platform like Spotify or Apple, please leave a rating and follow as well. All right, first story for today. This is a pretty big one for me specifically, and I'll share why in a minute. But this is a story coming out of Bloomberg. Quote, Guzman y Gomez gives up on failing U.S. business and shares soar. So the Australian burrito chain Guzman y Gomez Ltd. Is closing its Chicago restaurants immediately, exiting the U.S. in an abrupt end to an attempt to crack the world's biggest fast food market. The company's shares soared as investors welcomed the end of the capital drain. Quote, the U.S. business is unlikely to deliver the performance that would justify continued investment of shareholder capital, said founder and co-chief executive officer Stephen Marks on Friday. The stock surged as much as 21% in early Sydney as a sudden retreat ended the prospect of years of losses. Marks himself had been a constant cheerleader of the American venture, even as sales faltered. He has spent the past 3 months in the U.S. in a final hands-on attempt to turn the business around. Quote, it's a tough admission for management, but it's the right call. What markets don't forgive is an open-ended loss with no end in sight, and that's what the company's U.S. operations had become, said Josh Gilbert, lead analyst for the Asia-Pacific region at eToro. GYG had remained upbeat about the U.S. as recently as early April, when it said new outlets had delivered revenue growth and operations were improving. On a call with analysts after Friday's announcement, Marks was congratulated twice for admitting defeat in the U.S. Quote, it wasn't easy, he said. There are some things we would do differently. Chicago had proved a challenging market to crack, and starting out with suburban drive-through restaurants had made it difficult to build brand recognition, he said. This sudden decision to quit the vast market shows the board had finally had enough. Shareholders, too, were running out of patience. GYG is the most shorted stock on Australia's benchmark S&P 200 index. Investors holding 1/4 of the stock are betting it will fall. Guzman y Gomez shares were up 14% on Friday. The gain extended a 13% rally Thursday after RBC Capital Markets analyst Michael Toner upgraded the stock to outperform, citing the chain's Australian expansion plans. Still, the shares are trading below the 2024 initial public offering price of $22. Quote, the U.S. business had very low prospects of being successful, and the losses were weighing down the earnings of the group. The sooner exit than anticipated is a positive. They go on to say that at the company's annual general meeting in November last year, Stephen Marks said the U.S. restaurants were showing encouraging signs. Quote, it's a long game, but it's one worth playing, he said at the time. We've proven that GYG can scale profitably in Australia, and now we know we can do this in the U.S. too. They go on to say the company still has long-term targets of running 1,000 restaurants in Australia, about 4 times its current total. Without the widening losses in the U.S., Guzman y Gomez's earnings next year will probably be about 10% higher than previously expected. Analysts at Morgan Stanley, including Melinda Baxter, said in a note, with American losses no longer dragging on the business, GYG profits will improve, lifting shareholder dividends, executives said on a call after the announcement. And underlying earnings from the company's Australian business will be approximately about $61 million in United States currency for the year ending June, a jump of 29% from the prior year. At the end of March, GYG had 242 outlets in Australia, 23 in Singapore, 5 in Japan, and 8 in the U.S., which are now all closed. So interesting, right? A restaurant group from Australia leaves the U.S. market, says, we're done with the U.S. market, and they are rewarded in their stock portfolio. This I found very interesting for a variety of reasons. A being, I live in the Chicago suburbs. I live in the Naperville region. I've seen the Guzman y Gomez, the GYG restaurant out here, And in an era where there's just so many, the restaurant markets out here are saturated. Like I aim obviously to eat at independent restaurants first, but then you have all these restaurants out here. So to have a chain like GYG try to establish itself in a suburban Chicago market that already has so many different options to choose from, I can see why they had so many challenges. But again, even though I can understand why they left the market, to see a restaurant leave a market like the United States and see improvements in their company overall is something I don't know that I've seen too often. And so I wonder if there's going to be more international brands that do this or not. Obviously, consumers are feeling it right now when it comes to inflation. We'll get to that later on in grocery. When it comes to gas, when it comes to prices in general. So I feel like you need to really build brand loyalty, and consumers that are really trying to stretch their dollar are loyal to different brands. And if those brands, if they just want to go eat at those brands, then maybe they're less likely to venture out. And that's going to be a challenge for anyone trying to enter the U.S. market in 2026 and beyond, as long as the financial and economic conditions persist in the country. So, very interesting to see. Obviously, good to note for everyone listening. I'd be interested to see if any other international brands feel this, and I'll keep you updated as the year goes on in terms of restaurants like this, if we see any more leave. All right, so this next one coming out of Reddit Line Cooks. This is an interesting topic. Do you suck, or does the kitchen you work in suck? That is a question laid out by this cook. I want to read their post first, and then I'll give some advice, and I'll give some advice based on what I see in the thread as well. All right, quote: I'm trying to figure out if I am just shit at my job and can't do my job, or if the kitchen sucks, or am I being set up to fail and can't win no matter what? What do I do because I am the new guy? I'm somewhat early in my kitchen career, but I have worked in kitchens for a few years and do have education in this field. When I started this new job a week and a half ago at a newer place that it's being pretty in my wheelhouse. I thought it would be all good, but so far I've been told I've basically only been effing up. When I'm working the line, I am doing okay and I'm progressing well with my training, but prep, I can't win. Someone says make item A with recipe in the binder. I grab the recipe, I check in, say, is this the one? They say yes. I go and make it, and it turns out it was the wrong one. I make item B according to the recipe, and I'm told it's not the result they wanted. I am a cook and should know how to tweak it to be right for what they wanted. I make item C according to the recipe and let the lead try a bit, and they say add some of this, so I do. Lee says, great. Later, I am scolded for not following the recipe exactly. I go to make a recipe. Halfway through, one of the cooks training me comes over and says, oh, it's good now. Don't add the rest of the flour or it'll be too dry. It's finished, as is the recipe is kind of like that. I go, okay, we try a sample. Trainer says that's good. I go to put it away, and guess what? 30 minutes later, I am in trouble again for it being wrong. I keep getting different information from anyone training me. I am instructed to do what I am told exactly, only that, and to ask questions when needed. I've never had problems like this in any restaurant or even any job that I've worked before, and I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm having a very hard time figuring out if this is more so standard and I am in fact the problem and I just need to lock in and figure it out like everyone else does, or if this is a bad situation I am in and I'm getting bad training setting me up to mess me up. Any advice, thoughts, or just anything would be super helpful to hear. First of all, what a post to share. And obviously, if someone is sharing this in Reddit, this is obviously a problem that's happening across many kitchens. And I can say that because I have, for a decade now, met many chefs or many kitchens or cultures in kitchens where having recipes is seen as a negative. Where having recipes is seen as like some inability to cook or to have a talent as a chef. And that is like one of the worst ways to do business. What recipes are they are guardrails against inconsistency for the customer. Recipes ensure that you are able to put out a consistent product to your customers day in and day out, service after service, no matter who comes through your kitchen. What recipes do is they standardize processes. In the best restaurants, even high level Michelin star fine dining restaurants, have recipes, have methods that are followed time and time again to achieve a consistent process over and over. The best restaurants I've worked for have very in-depth administrative build-outs of their recipes, whether it be software. Like there's a ton of softwares out there. Again, shout out Chef Tech Stack. What Justin's building, he could help you finalize this as well. But software such as that, I've seen it where it's files on an iPad out of Google Drive and iPads that are like on hard covers that are cleaned. I've obviously seen the binders, although I think those run the risk of getting dirty, collecting bacteria, being lost, getting mismanaged. So I'm of the belief in 2026, if you can afford it as a restaurant, and there are some affordable options out there of having your recipes digitally stored and shared to your staff. Now, that being said, the recipe itself initially has to be put in correctly. And a lot of chefs get this wrong. As someone who works as a recipe development chef now, I cannot share enough how critical recipes are, especially when they're being done at scale. And so when they're being done at restaurants, you need to be able to write recipes that are easy to follow. The methods, and like one of my biggest tips is if you're writing a recipe, have your method match the ingredients listed. So say you're going to start out and you need to use the eggs, you need to use the flour, and you need to use butter, right? And then later on in the recipe, you have vanilla and you have like baking soda. Don't put baking soda and vanilla first if you're using the eggs, butter, and flour first. Put the items in order in your ingredient list of what's being used in the method. So as you're reading the method and as you're reading the recipe, it's matching up. There's a lot of recipe creation hygiene that I think Justin and I are going to give a workshop on that I think is really helpful, that I've learned and that I've implemented. But beyond that, in general, as a chef, you need to put your recipes in correctly. You can't have an expectation of consistency if you don't give the guardrails to be consistent. When you have a restaurant you're managing and you're just expecting anyone who comes in off the street to become a line cook to use their intuition, especially if they're new, to make the recipes to your exact taste, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And honestly, it's a poor way to manage your business. Recipes are what ensures that consistent product time and time again. And furthermore, it keeps people happy and able to do their job correctly. A big reason for turnover in the restaurant world is the mistreatment of cooks. And one of the worst ways to treat your staff is to frustrate them, is to not give them the tools to succeed and then demand perfection while your management system is not perfect. To demand a high level of integrity from their work when your level of management is subpar at best. So to have these consistent administrative systems built out for your cooks is key. And so when you get to a cook like this who's struggling, who feels like they're going through the spin cycle of everyone yelling at them and telling them they suck and making them question their own talent and ability to cook, like this is a leadership failure. This is a failure of the management in that kitchen to lead this person to success. And so some of the responses I wanted to share, and one of them, so it says, quote, "It sounds to me that the kitchen you're working in is super unorganized. There are people that are there longer than you, and your sous chef or head chef need to be there and train you. I don't know if their recipes are just bad or you're messing up the steps, but it doesn't even matter. Someone needs to be there and teach you how they do this stuff. If I was at your place, I would talk to the most experienced guy in your shift to explain to you and school you on how to do things correctly, to explain the steps and recipe and so on. Keep your head up and you got this. It's cooking, not rocket science." Someone else says that recipes are inaccurate and not kept up with. That's an issue on the chef. The kitchen is inconsistent. Instead of the people who should take responsibility for that doing so, they are wasting time and money in treating their cooks like trash. In well-run restaurants, a kitchen manager or chef would get counseled for that not being updated. If the boss ain't doing it, or at least ensuring it gets done, then what is the new guy going to do but become a cog in the wheel of BS? And then someone says they go through and they help their chefs upgrade it, and you don't obviously want to make changes, but it's good to make them aware. And then someone says this. So someone was basically asking them, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but it's mandating that these recipes aren't correct. And they go on to say you could probably have, and it's true that the cook could probably have more to learn. But then the person posting this shares this. At the moment, one of the toughest parts of it is that there is no head chef or sous chef. It seems that they have cycled through a few in the last while, but currently there is none. There is a lead cook who's been there the longest, but he's constantly at odds with the owner. They do both have very different visions and opinions on how I should go about doing things, and there are days where neither one is even there at all. That's the smoking gun of all of this. There's not even leadership in the kitchen. And so when I was reading through this and preparing my notes for this, I didn't have that background information. And when I get to the bottom, I see that I'm like, okay, so there you go. And you see how the absence of management leads to this poor inability to cook, or this poor ability to cook and execute on recipes. And so that owner and this is someone that has not built a good kitchen culture. This is someone who has not built the systems that are needed for his restaurant to succeed. And unfortunately, he's going to reap the rewards of his poor management, whether that be this cook leaving or the restaurant shutting down. The fact that you cannot cycle through management, the fact that you don't have management establishing systems and you're running and operating a business, Justin and I talk about this concept all the time of like some businesses, you need to operate a tight ship, but you need to have the systems in place. Like we say the word systems a ton because that's really what it is. When XYZ happens, you fall back on the systems you build in a restaurant or in any food business. And so to have the guardrails just completely not there is the end point is cook or chef listening, you are not the problem. This is poor management. This is poor leadership. And so if anyone is in this situation or you feel the similar way and you see this, you should not be thinking you're the bad part of this. You're not the problem. Is there always room to grow? This even in situations like this? Of course. We're not all perfect. I have things I need to work on. There's tons of stuff I need to be better at. But to not have any leadership is wild. And so no, you are not the problem. You do not suck. So let me know in the comments if you've experienced a restaurant like this, or if you think that, you have you been in a situation like this? And how do you implement, if you're a chef, recipes in your kitchen? And if you work in a kitchen with really good recipe standardization, how has that helped you? Have you come into a space where maybe it was like this and you've gone to a kitchen where recipes are standardized? What are your thoughts on this below? All right, next up, we're back to Starbucks. It's ending its use of AI to count inventory, a win for the humans. This is coming out of Nation's Restaurant News. Quote, coffee chain cited a decision to shift to a single process across all of its inventory counts amid complaints about accuracy. Quote, so much for Starbucks using AI to count the milk in its inventory. The coffee shop giant said it is ending its use of an automated program to count inventory. The company said the decision was designed to shift to a single, consistent process for all of its inventory counts. Writers had earlier reported that the company was scrapping the program and noted that the program was miscounting and mislabeling products. And baristas and social media posts were critical of the program almost from the get-go. Quote, it's frankly impressive how bad it actually is, noted one commenter on the social media site on Reddit. Another commenter declared they were about to punch a wall over it. A barista on TikTok said the system struggled with some items, forcing them to count it by hand. Starbucks announced its use of AI inventory counting last year. The program features computer vision, 3D spatial intelligence, and augmented reality to count stock in minutes rather than more than an hour. Baristas use a handheld tablet to scan products on shelves, counting the items as they go. The program was part of a set of changes designed to improve inventory management at the company's shops, which have had issues with product shortages. Starbucks said at the same time that the shops using technology counted inventory 8 times more frequently than those that didn't. Starbucks on Thursday, however, said baristas will instead use the same inventory tools and routines used for all of its inventory. They only use the processes for milks and other beverages, and it wanted to shift to a single, consistent process over inventory counts. Baristas in comments to the company, seen by the Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Business, praised the decision, with one calling the realignment a huge correction to our process. Said another, thanks for discontinuing automated counting. The thought behind it was great, but the execution was proving difficult. Starbucks' shift away from automated counting is the latest setback for major fast food chains' publicized use of the technology on certain tasks. Drive-through AI at fast food chains appears to have slowed as the technology struggles to meet the demands of large-scale brands. And a big Pizza Hut franchisee filed a lawsuit against the brand this year, arguing that the Dragon Tail software led to slower delivery times, colder product, and reduced customer satisfaction. I wanted to bring this story up quickly because Justin and I covered AI and AI adoption in terms of the restaurant industry, I think a month or two ago. The idea was that the restaurant industry has not really adopted AI in many of its processes. And we've seen attempts at these by companies like Starbucks and whatnot. And what they're proving to find out is it's very difficult to do this. Restaurants are built off of humans. They are built off of the worker. These processes are done by people that have had experience. It's very technical. It's very laborious. If you've ever done an inventory count, you know this. This is not something where you're going to have an AI tool simply go in the state of where it's at now. Next week, I'll be discussing the National Restaurant Association show I went to. I have a lot of takeaways. But what I thought was interesting is that AI is nowhere near where I think a lot of us maybe envision it in our heads. There are the interesting robots. There are the interesting tools, but it's still very far off for restaurants. And the reason why is because it's very, very difficult to replicate a restaurant worker. And so again, just a call to businesses out there, your workers are your lifeblood. There's no tool or AI coming in that's going to make it better. Restaurants are a hard business, so treating your staff like great is your best way forward as a business. It's the best way to achieve success in restaurants. So, wanted to share that for those maybe worried about AI because right now it is being very, very difficult or proving very difficult for restaurants to do that. All right, next up, this is coming out of Food Dive. I like to give some economic awareness to those in the food industry, and we touched on inflation last week. This is a quick report out of Food Dive. Quote: Grocery inflation hits its highest level since mid 2023. Tomato prices were up nearly 40% year over year in April, the quickest rate of inflation among the food at home categories. So they go on to say that grocery inflation remained in somewhat of a holding pattern during the final 2 months of 2025 and the first quarter of this year, bouncing between a yearly pace of 1.9% and 2.4%. But then that pattern abruptly ended in April. The annual pace of food at home inflation moved up by a full percentage point last month compared with March, the largest month to month increase for the metric since May 2022, when prices were skyrocketing and inflation was in double digits. Grocery inflation came in at 1.9% in March. The 2.9% rate of food at home inflation recorded in April is the highest level since August 2023, and grocery inflation stood at 3%. Overall inflation hit 3.8% in April, the highest rate since May 2023. The BLS did not release inflation figures for most categories for October 2025 because of the federal government shutdown. Meat prices also continue to play a central role in pushing prices up in April, with beef price inflation remaining in double digits. Prices for uncooked beef roast were up almost 18% last month compared with their level a year ago, while prices for uncooked beef steaks surged just over 16%, and uncooked ground beef prices were up 14.5%. Shoppers also paid significantly more for produce in April, as prices for fruits and vegetables moved up approximately 6%. Fresh vegetable prices were up in an especially fast clip, rising 11.5% as tomato prices skyrocketed. Coffee was one more source of pain for grocery shoppers, as the beverage cost almost 20% more last month than it did a year ago. On the other hand, prices for poultry were up less than 1%, with prices for fresh whole chickens declining nearly 2%, and egg prices fell more than 39%. So, inflation is an issue. It is something that is, really, really impacting consumers. You're going to start to see this with the restaurant slowdown we covered. And another big point is inflation hits 3.8%, and it's outpaced wage growth for the first time in 3 years. So this is again from Grocery Dive, where they're saying that the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that inflation in April reached 3.8%. Gas prices were up 11% year over year in April before seasonal adjustment, and the electricity index rose over 2%. So, with prices outpacing wages and uncertainty about the Iran war and its effect on gas prices, U.S. consumers are likely to remain under pressure for much of the year. So, again, and they go on to finally say that the tax refund boon is kind of almost over. You see a lot of spending post tax refunds. Inflation is hitting customers, it's hitting consumers. Any value you can add to, and it's hitting restaurants, it's hitting you as operators. So, any value add to your customers obviously is there, but it is an issue. The rising prices are an issue, rising costs are an issue, and so just making you aware, you're not feeling crazy if you're a listener who doesn't work in restaurants, you go to the grocery store and see prices are rising. It's because of this, and if you're a restaurant operator, you're obviously feeling the brunt of this right now. So hopefully there's some relief in the future, but I'm not sure how that comes, to be honest with you. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. All right, this is out of the National Restaurant Association. I have two more stories, this being one of them. Quote, GLP-1 in restaurants, shifting habits, not shrinking demand. So we covered a year ago that GLP-1 use had the possibility of impacting restaurants. And so what actually the National Restaurant Association found is something a little different. Quote, according to a recent consumer survey conducted by the NRA, roughly 1 in 8 adults are currently taking some form of GLP-1s, and that is expected to rise significantly in the months and years ahead. Growing affordability and expanded insurance coverage are likely to accelerate adoption. 29% of adults who are not currently using a GLP-1 said they would consider doing so if it was more accessible and cost effective. At first glance, this trend may raise concerns for restaurant operators given that GLP-1 medications often suppress appetite. There's understandable anxiety that widespread use could dampen demand and reduce overall sales. However, the survey results point to a more nuanced reality. Consumers taking GLP-1 medications are more engaged with restaurants than those who are not. On average, GLP-1 users reported purchasing a meal, snack, or beverage from a restaurant 7.6 times in the week prior to the survey, compared with 5.1 times for non-users. In other words, despite smaller appetites, GLP-1 users are remaining highly active in restaurants. suggesting that while how they order may be evolving, the reliance on and interest in restaurants is not diminishing. This above average level of restaurant usage persists even as many GLP-1 users report adjusting their behavior. Nearly half say they have cut back on how often they dine out since starting the medication. At the same time, 1 in 4 say they are visiting restaurants more frequently than before, while roughly 3 in 10 report no meaningful change. Together, these findings highlight that although GLP-1 use may shift habits, it does not diminish the importance of restaurants and users' routines. And they go on to say that what has changed more noticeably is how GLP-1 users order when they do visit. A large majority report modifying their ordering habits, with the most common adjustments including choosing smaller portion sizes, prioritizing high-protein items, and incorporating more vegetables into their meals. These shifts reflect a broader alignment with dietary preferences, often associated with GLP-1 usage rather than a withdrawal from restaurant dining altogether. Indeed, restaurants remain deeply embedded in the lifestyle of these users. A striking 87% say they enjoy going to restaurants, and 71% consider restaurants an essential part of their lifestyle. 10 percentage points higher than 61% of all adults who say the same. This underscores that even amid behavioral and dietary changes, the social, experiential, and convenience aspects of restaurants continue to resonate strongly with the group. For operators, these patterns present a meaningful opportunity. More than 9 in 10 GLP-1 users indicate they would order menu items that align with their specific food and beverage preferences. And 76% say they would be willing to pay a premium for such options. So not only would they be willing to order a GLP-1 focused item, they would pay more for it. This demonstrates both strong demand and pricing flexibility for offerings that cater to portion control, nutritional balance, and health-conscious eating. A significant 86% of GLP-1 users said they would be interested in purchasing take-home meal kits from restaurants that provide ingredients for complete meals tailored to their preferences. This highlights the potential for restaurants to expand into hybrid dining solutions that combine convenience with dietary customization. Communication remains an area for improvement. While 9 in 10 GLP-1 users say restaurants typically offer healthy menu options, 89% believe operators could do a better job highlighting and communicating those choices. They also emphasize the importance of flexibility and personalization. They express strong interest in having more portion size options, as well as the ability to order snack size items throughout the day. What an interesting report. I believe I said on a podcast about a year ago that you should be offering GLP-1 catered menu items to customers. I know that a lot of restaurants will scoff at that. I know a lot of people will scoff at that. I know a lot of people have their own opinions on GLP-1 medication. But the reality is a large portion of the American population adopting this goes to eat at restaurants. And what the data is showing is that someone on GLP-1s is actually more likely to go visit a restaurant. And imagine what they would do if the restaurant they go to visit caters to their dietary needs. Showcasing high protein, showcasing controlled portions, showcasing nutritional benefits. If I told you there was a segment of customers that were willing to be more loyal to your restaurant, were willing to pay a premium for you to cater to them, they're willing to pay more for you to cater to them, and they would likely even purchase items out to take home, whether it be a meal kit or a to-go order. As an operator, would you not sign up for that? That is what you have with GLP-1 consumers. You have a group of people willing to pay more, willing to be more loyal, and willing to entertain different revenue channels for your business. So if you're a restaurant in 2026 struggling, I highly recommend you promote and you showcase GLP-1 menu items. Of course, not everyone's a dietitian. You'll have to do it in a way that makes sense for your business and the risk you want to take on. But GLP-1 friendly items could be like smaller portions, could be higher protein. Like those are the types of GLP-1 friendly tasting menus where it's like a bite or two. Like, get creative. And then again, offer take-home kits. Like, do a pilot run. Offer 2 or 3 kits and be like, hey, we're trying this new product. If you're on GLP-1s, you want to take a kit home. It doesn't have to be just for GLP-1s either. It could be just like health-focused kits. You take this home, you're going to have a healthy meal that's 450 to 500 calories. It's nutritionally sound. It's high in protein. It's going to satiate you. What a product to sell. As restaurants try to discover more and more revenue channels and ways to make money, I highly believe and I'm very bullish on this idea that the GLP-1 consumer will be that type of segment for restaurants. I'd love to hear if you work in a restaurant and if you've implemented any GLP-1 focused dining for your customers or if you're seeing this as a trend. But the fact that the National Restaurant Association is sharing this, I think it's just a brilliant idea. And I think it's a segment that, again, like the recipe software, you could scoff at it and let ego get in the way, or you can actually cater to your employees and your customers to be more profitable, to generate more revenue, and own a more successful business. All right, before we get out of here on Memorial Day weekend, my last piece is this unique discount by Giordano's. Again, living in the Chicago area, Giordano's, my favorite chain deep dish pizza. And so they're offering a new discount uh, to gas prices. This is from Nation's Restaurant News. I thought it was a creative way to offer a discount. Might be a good way for restaurants to offer it. But they go on to say that pizza lovers will get at least one benefit from rising gas prices. The Chicago-based pizza chain Giordano's is rolling out a new promotion, Summer Savings, Save a Gallon, in which loyalty members can get discounts based on the price of a gallon of gas in its hometown. The discount will be available on any pizza order. Every Monday throughout the summer, the 60-unit chain will update the discount based on the average cost of a gallon of regular gas, according to AAA. It's about $5.22 right now, for instance. Nick Scarpino, the CEO of Giordano's, said in a statement, the promotion is our way of giving guests a little extra value while still enjoying the pizza traditions they love. The offer applies to any order that includes either the chain's stuffed deep dish thin crust or tavern-style pizza, and with a minimum price of $15. The program starts this week. The promotion is the latest by restaurant chains tied to the rising price of gas, which has damaged consumer confidence and is threatening to weaken traffic during an already difficult market. Brands such as Subway, Snooze Eatery, Arby's, Cracker Barrel, and others have tied promotions to gas prices. The national average price for a gallon of gas was $4.55 as of Friday, according to AAA, holding relatively steady after soaring in March and April. But the summer travel season threatens to send those prices higher in the coming months. That could hurt industry traffic, and studies from various sources, including black box intelligence and revenue management systems, have found a direct correlation between higher gas prices and weaker industry results. Casual dining brands like Giordano's are particularly susceptible as customers shift to lower priced chains. So, loyal customers, they get the discount based on the price of a gallon of gas, so they're saving a gallon. I thought it was pretty unique. I thought it was interesting. We'll see if it works, but again, there's a lot of creative solutions out there. This isn't to undercut how difficult it is, and I know it's difficult, but trying to give you the information and the value you have to hopefully make better decisions for your business. So, thank you all for listening. Again, if you are listening and you have not subscribed, we are 2 away from 2,000. Please hit that subscribe button. We're going to get there before June. Also, go to the description and fill out the form for Chef Tech Stack if you're interested in learning about what Justin's building. Thank you all for listening. Hope you have a great Memorial Day, and I'll see you on the next Repertoire Report.